Hello and welcome again to Love Essentials with Tara
and Hannah. And last time we were before you, we were talking about intercession and how you can intercede for your spouse, which led us back into discussion about accountability and how you have to be willing to be held accountable and hold your spouse accountable in order to intercede for them.
Yes, and so what does that look like? Because you know that typically when we say intercede, a lot of people say, I pray for my spouse all the time. And I see what's going on with them, and I prayed it, and I left it in the hands of the Lord. Amen. And I don't have to do anything else because God is taking care of that. And we really need you to understand that God works through people.
Right.
He works through us to help our spouse.
Exactly.
If God could just zap down and speak to your spouse with a booming voice, first of all, it would scare them. But that's not what he does. He uses that loving relationship between a spouse in a marriage to get you to where you're supposed to go.
Right.
So, yes, prayer. Prayer is important. That's the faith part. But the works is what we need to talk about today.
Yeah.
And so,
in talking about the works, it's more than just you praying, as you said before, but it's also about you kind of doing the work and doing the research. And you learning with your spouse what it is that they need, which means you have to have a conversation. You have to communicate with them. You can't just be like, oh, I'm going to let them do them and I'm going to do me. What kind of marriage is that?
No, and you have to research what the stronghold is.
Exactly.
If I don't have any background to what I see my spouse is dealing with, I don't understand the insecurity that I'm seeing. I don't understand the low self-esteem that I'm seeing. I don't understand daddy issues because I got a daddy. I don't understand mama issues because I got a mama.
Right.
I don't understand substance abuse, alcoholism. You have to go and research it for yourself, because once we research, we can have compassion.
Right.
We can understand, okay, my spouse, this is something they are really struggling with, that people who have this issue struggle with. And it's not them just not loving me, because sometimes they'll say, well, if you love me enough, you wouldn't be dealing with this.
Right.
You wouldn't be doing this if you just love me. Why don't you love me enough? Or you need to pray to God so you can get over that.
Right, and that's the thing. Like, we can't just throw around and make people wonder about their faith in regards to saying like, oh, well, if you have faith in God, that he can heal you from this. Yes, God can heal them from it. But at the same time, God is a God who allows us to go through process so that we can learn a lesson.
Yes.
So even though he is fully capable of just saying, okay, I heal you of that, that's no longer an issue. He's like, no, I need y'all to work together. I need for this one to get through this process to heal from this, but I need you to have patience. I need you to show them grace. Doesn't the Bible tell us that we're supposed to extend grace and allow grace for people to mess up and to do wrong? But we don't do that.
Oh, no.
You know, and so when it comes to interceding, when you want to say that, oh, well, I've prayed, well, were you persistent? What about the persistent widow? Look at how long she kept going back to the king, you know, trying to get him to hear her out. It wasn't a one-time thing. She wasn't just like, oh, well, I already went to him. No, she kept going, and that's what we're supposed to do. And when we do the work and when we do the research, it also allows us to have empathy. And that's one of the things that I feel like we're missing a lot. We are always looking internal. When it comes to us, we want people to show us grace. We want people to have mercy. We want people to give us patience because we're going through a problem. But when it's reversed and it's time for us to show it to somebody else, it's like, oh no, you got to get your life together.
And what you're doing is hurting me. You know, when our spouses are doing things or struggling with something, the only thing a lot of times we can think about is how it's affecting us.
Right.
This is hurting me. Don't you see how this is affecting me? This is hurting my feelings. This is hurting our family. Not really realizing your spouse is struggling with something. They don't want to destroy the family. They don't want to hurt the family. In fact, a lot of times they're ashamed of what they're struggling with, because nobody wants to struggle with anything.
No.
But they need you to recognize the process. See, when our spouses come to us, and that's a very humbling thing to say, hey, I'm dealing with something. What they're saying is, I trust you to give you this information. Please don't make me feel bad about it. I'm trying to get your help and your assistance. I'm telling you, I need you. But if we're not careful, we'll say, well, what is that? Why are you dealing with that? And oh my God, if you respond like that, then the person is not going to feel like you are a help, that you're going to advocate for them, that you're going to support them. So now I'm dealing with a struggle. Now I've told my spouse, they don't like it. They're upset. Now I got to deal with the guilt of the struggle. Now the guilt of hurting my spouse. Lord forbid if they tell me to tell the whole family what I'm struggling with, because you got spouses that'll do that. Well, you need to tell your mama, the pastor, counselor. We need to tell everybody what you're struggling with. Right. And they're like, oh my God, I thought I was just going to tell you first.
Right.
But no. And then it becomes a shaming process, because we need to go talk to our pastor. Right. And you have some spouses where the husband or the wife may not even be going to the church, but you need to come talk to my pastor, really. And now they need to know you got a problem. Right. Okay, but God gave you're here.
Right. Before
you go get the crowd, make sure that your spouse feels covered by you first. Covered. They're covered in what they're struggling with by you and supported by you, so that even if they don't want to go see your pastor, they don't want to go to see your appointed counselor that you want to go see, they have you there first. Once you build that nurturing environment, now they may say, okay, we can invite the village because it's beyond what I can do. Right. Can I invite maybe one person you trust first and then another person? That's how you ease somebody into a trust zone, because those issues may come from a lot of baggage, a lot of hurt where people have done things to them. So you telling them, but let's not invite all these other strangers that you don't know, tell them what you did so they can judge you, and let's fix you because you're the one with the problem.
And we don't realize that it's our problem, right? You just said a key thing right there, that this is your problem because this is something that you dealt with your family. But no, we became one. We're becoming one. So it's our problem, and it's something that you need to be just as invested in.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And it's understandable if it's something that you don't know how to handle. It's not for you to handle. That's the other thing. First of all, we're supposed to cast all of our cares onto God. And so the thing is that it's not about you taking on your spouse's burden and you figuring it out. No, it's you praying and interceding for your spouse, taking it to God for him to bear, for him to deal with it. And I just feel a lot of the times that we just get so overwhelmed because we're trying to deal with it on our own. And then because you feel overwhelmed and your spouse still hasn't changed, now you just like, well, I can't. And you're giving up because you've been trying to do it in your own strength and in your own might, and that's not the way that you're supposed to.
You can't do it. And part of your process, if you're trying to help your spouse get through something, is saying, God, give me the strength to help them.
Right.
I know you love my spouse. I know you have graced them. I know you love them despite what they're going through. Help me while you're working through them. While I'm praying for them, while I'm interceding, give me wisdom, give me knowledge. That's where the research comes in. Give me all the tools so I can understand it to a point I can give them the grace.
Right.
See, you have to ask God sometimes to give you grace for your spouse if you don't have it.
If you don't have it.
Give me patience for my spouse if I don't have it. Give me kindness for him if I don't have it.
And be willing to admit that. Because a lot of times, and we talked about this in a previous episode, in the fact that, you know, a lot of us prior to getting married, we did not necessarily pray and say, okay, God, is this the person?
Yes.
Do I have the grace to deal with the baggage that I don't know about? Okay, so you didn't do that. Well, here you are now. Now is the time for you to ask, okay, God, please give me the grace to deal with this so that I can help them. And so how do we go about intercession? How does one intercede for their spouse?
The first thing you have to do, and like we say, intercession, first of all, involves prayer. You have to have a regular prayer life.
Yeah.
And I don't mean the prayer life where, you know, Father God, help them. Amen. Help my, you see what they're dealing with, Lord. Amen. You don't even spend any time saying, God, let me dig into your word and study so that I can understand what grace is. See, some of us have to be educated on what grace really truly means.
Yeah.
What forgiveness truly means. I tell you I forgive you, but I'm resentful. I tell you that I forgive you, but I'm gonna bring it up every time you make me mad about something else. I'm gonna tell you that, you know, you really still weak because you remember what you did to me. So forgiveness is a decision you make to say, I am going to love you fully. I am going to forgive what you did. I'm going to understand and have grace that none of us are perfect.
Right.
You are not perfect. I am not perfect. You messed up. I'm so sorry you went through that. You messed up. I don't like the fact that it hurt me, but I love you, and we're going to process through it, because all humans make mistakes, all of us.
Right.
And we want to sometimes say, well, your mistake is much higher than mine. Your flaws are much deeper than mine. No, we all fall short of the glory of God. And so when you have a spouse, you're saying, I can carry the weight of whatever they deal with, and I'm going to fight with them. I'm going to get in the trenches with them. Whatever I see the enemy trying to do to destroy my spouse, it will not prosper.
Right.
I am the tool and the instrument in my spouse's life where I see the real things going on with them. They can fake it for everybody else, but I see where the enemy is really trying to get in on my spouse. So I'm going to have a regular prayer time. And until I see the change, I'm going to keep praying for them over that thing. Because sometimes we just get weary and we don't want to keep praying for it. Until you see a change, you keep praying.
Right.
You keep praying, and then you go get advice from trusted people and say, somebody pray with me. If you and your spouse are not praying about it, you need a prayer team. Somebody that loves your spouse, supports your spouse, cares about your spouse. You say, hey, let's get together and pray for them.
Right.
We need the prayer. We need the understanding. And then we need to celebrate our spouse's progression.
Yes.
We need to celebrate when I saw that you were, maybe smoking in the garage 5 days a week, but now I only see you going there 2 days a week. Hey, baby, I really do see you are trying to cut that habit. Hey, you cheated on me. That was horrible. But hey, we done been 5 years married and we ain't had no problems. You know what? I think you finally kicked that thing. It's stuff like that your spouse needs to hear. I actually see you trying to do the work to make our marriage work.
Yeah.
Despite your issues, despite your flaws, I see progression in you trying to do better.
Right.
The spouses got to hear that.
They do. They do have to hear that. A lot of times we focus on the negative than the positive. Even with this whole pandemic that we've been in, people have been focusing on the negative and not looking at the beauty from these ashes. And it's the same thing with our marriages. We want to focus on what's not being done, or we want to focus on what's not changing. Well, what has changed? Are you telling me that it's been bad all this time?
Everything.
Everything is just horrible. There's no good. There's no blessing. But you believe in God. You believe in God. You serve Him. You say that He's real. He's the Lord of your life. So you gonna tell me that He hasn't done anything good for you in your marriage? That it's so negative. We have to look past that. We have to change our perspective, and that's one of the key things. Even in intercession, you have to understand, the Bible tells us to call those things that are not as though they are. So that means right now, that's not what's happening. But if you want to see different, you have to say different, because there is life and death in the power of our tongue. What are you saying? It's the weight of your words.
Yes.
What kind of seeds are you planting right now with what you're saying? And that's what happens when you go into prayer. How can you really intercede for your spouse if you're focusing on the negative? If you don't see the change, well, what are you talking to God about? What are you saying to Him? Are you talking to God and complaining to Him about what hasn't happened?
Yeah, they want God to punish their spouse. Did you see what they did to me, Lord? Punish them. You have people who literally want their spouse to suffer. Yes, we're together. Yes, I said I forgive him. Yes, I said I'm working, but I'm really hoping the Lord will do something to him. And I'm just being honest. There are people who really they don't want to see their spouse actually prosper. If you are not praying over your spouse and saying, God bless them in their coming and their going, God favor them everywhere that they go, God give them favor with everybody that's in authority over them, God bless their health, bless their mind, bless their body, their spirit. If you cannot say that from the pits of your heart, God, I want the very best for my spouse, there's something going on in you.
Yeah.
There's something wrong there, because are you really supporting a person that you cannot wish well on? Right. That you can't say, God, I hope the best. Even when they hurt me, even when they disappoint me, God, I want you to bless them because I love them. If that cannot flow from the heart and from your lips about your spouse, you have a heart issue.
Yeah. And that's when you got to do an internal check.
Yes.
And every now and again, we need to do that heart check with ourselves. You have to stop looking at your spouse and what they're not doing.
Yes.
Look at yourself sometimes and just what are your motives? What is your intent? What is it that you really need to check for yourself? Because it's so easy for us to point out the flaws of other people, but it's not as easy for us to see our own flaws, or to be, going to God about, okay, God, I understand that this is a problem. What is it about me that is a trigger for this?
Yes.
Because you have to ask yourself that question too. Like the issues that your spouse may be having, are you triggering those things?
Yes.
And if you're triggering them and you're not trying to help them overcome this, but you just a trigger, then all hell is going to break loose in your marriage. Yeah, it's going to be a struggle. It's going to be hard because now you can't even see what it is that you're doing. And the thing is that even when I say that, I can sense that people will be like, so what you're saying is my fault?
It's my fault? Yeah. Well, what we're saying is there are some contributing factors, because like the statement I made last show that was not awesome, but if your spouse is struggling with something for 15, 20 years and they're married to you, that's a help issue.
Right.
Because that means that there is something that you are not tuned into or trying to address with your spouse. The behavior you see is a cry for help. There's a lack somewhere. And you ignore the fact that you can actually be a factor in helping the lack. And you say, I don't know what they're dealing with. That's their problem. I do me, they do them. Okay, so when these things come out and you wonder why they're there, and you say, I didn't have anything to do with that. That's just a decision they made. No, you left your post because we are on post for our spouse.
Yes,
there is a war continuously against marriages, against the salvation of your spouse's soul. And so when you leave your post and say, they grown and I'm grown, we don't tell each other what to do. They do them, I do me. And you see your spouse slowly going into these habits that are leading them away from God, and you don't say anything. You slowly see that you all are apart. You're not spending time together. You're not even talking anymore. You're not even connected intimately anymore. Right. And that is not a red flag. Nobody's saying, hey, is something wrong? Because the enemy works on division.
Right.
If they can divide the two, they can divide the marriage, they can destroy them both separately.
Right.
And so we as spouses have to be cognizant of these little separators.
Yes.
These little things that happen to keep us from speaking to one another, from communicating, from saying, hey, so what's going on in your head this week? I haven't talked to you all day. What have you been talking about? Are you all right?
Right.
Like, we need to be able to sit and say, I noticed you were sitting over there. What you thinking about? You look like you're in a deep space. Can I get in there? Can I know what's going on with you? You better find out. You better find out why they kind of sitting quiet a lot.
Right.
Why they're always going off, you in the room, and they always walking off to go to another room. See, one of the things that I got into a big Facebook fight one time, because I told these people, they said, my spouse goes to sleep sometimes on the sofa watching TV, and I like to leave them there because I like to go to bed sometimes by myself and have a whole bed to myself. Let me explain something to you. While you in the bed, that's the most dangerous time for you to leave your spouse sitting somewhere while you off sleep. See, while you off sleep, that's when the inbox messages are happening. Mm-hmm. That's when the text messages are happening. That's when the pornography is being pulled up on the laptop. You don't understand. While you're asleep and you went to sleep on your post and you keep leaving your spouse downstairs by themselves, that's when a lot of the debauchery is happening. And I'm talking about husbands and wives.
Yeah.
There's a lot you can get rid of or avoid by y'all simply going to bed together. By you saying, sweetheart, I'm turning in for the night. Why don't you turn in with me? And it's not a control factor. It's just a matter of you should be turning in together.
It's accountability.
Accountability.
That's what that is.
Intimacy. There's so many reasons why you should go to bed at the same time as your spouse. Keep leaving them up if you want to. You are leaving your post. There's a lot you can avoid by simply just doing what you should do.
And when you think about just going back to you using that analogy about being on post, and I remember it was an older wife in the church that said that to me. She was like, Hannah, you are the watchman of your house.
Yes.
And you have to think of yourself as the watchman. Just think about it. If back in the day the watchman fell asleep, when they were supposed to be on post and looking out guard to see if somebody was going to attack, and the kingdom got attacked. That's the watchman's fault.
That's the watchman's
because
fault.
he fell asleep. He wasn't watching. Like, that is your very job title, watchman.
Yes.
Like,
How many children are not being watched? I'm not. You have people that say, I'm tired. I'm not babysitting my spouse. That is not babysitting. You married to hold one another accountable. Some of y'all need to be held accountable. You saying you going upstairs and going to sleep, and you're not. You on your phone. And you texting and you scrolling and people telling you cute via on your messenger in your inbox. See, a lot of you don't want. I don't want the spouse right there, because that's when the enemy is deceiving you, though. That's when he's deceiving you. Your spouse is there so that both of you may get to the point that you're supposed to be with God.
And that keeps you from interceding, because first of all, if you're not holding them accountable, then they're not holding you accountable. So I'm not going to start holding you accountable for you to start checking me. I'm not going to do that. And then while we're both over here living our separate lives, not holding each other accountable, there's no intercession going on.
No.
And so how do you expect for strongholds to be broken if you're not taking it to the Lord in prayer, if you're not praying about it, if this isn't a part of your assignment? Obviously, you're going to continue to see this cycle of things going on continuously, and that's insanity. Doing the same thing over and over again and not changing anything and expecting a difference, that's just insane.
Yeah. And you're both getting destroyed.
Yes.
Because you have strongholds that you may not be paying attention. Yeah, you're talking about your spouse's strongholds. They could probably tell you one or two. You have two if y'all ever actually sit down and you say, do you think I have some behaviors that are not good for my well-being? How many of y'all willing to do that? Tell your spouse, do you see some things in me that you think are counterproductive for my life?
Right.
I bet they got a list ready. You just never asked them.
Right.
But it would help us all to get to where we need to be. So here's the thing, because we're gonna get into this, a lot deeper in the next show. We have to talk about creating an environment where your spouse feels comfortable with sharing with you what they're dealing with.
Yeah.
Because some spouses, some people are married to strangers.
Yeah.
Like, I know you enough to where I'm comfortable with you staying in my house. I know you're not a murderer and you do work and help pay these bills. But really get into your psyche to find out who you are, I don't know. Some people are scared to actually get into their spouse's head, or it might be exhausting if I really start asking them what's going on with them, because they got a lot going on and I really don't even want to deal with that. So I'm married to somebody that's really a stranger, but your spouse should feel like they can unfold with you. Why be married to somebody and you don't know who you're really married to? Right. So there's an environment, a nurturing environment that must be created where the two can say, you know what? I'm going to just tell you, if I don't tell nobody else, these are some issues in my life. These are some things that go through my head. Can I tell you about some real stuff that goes through my head? I don't even know if it's all right, but I need to run it past somebody. Can I run it past you? Because sometimes we're running it past friends, family members, and our spouse don't even know we thinking these type of thoughts. And then we leave them and they're like, where that come from? You never told them that you was on your way out, but your best friend know that you've been thinking about divorce and calling attorneys, but your spouse don't really know. They just know you're angry, but they didn't know you were that angry or that unhappy or that resentful, but you're telling everybody else. But these are conversations where we have to create an environment where we can say, hey, we need to sit down and talk because I'm feeling some kind of way. Yeah. And this is where it's stemming from and this is where it's coming from. That has to be created in a marriage. Yeah, it does. You have to have a safe space. You have to be able to talk with one another. Communication is very important. It's important to being accountable. It's important to interceding. It's important to you knowing how to be a helper. Yes. It's important to all of these different things that you need in order to be a good spouse. Not just a good spouse, but in order to be the spouse that God created you to be for that person. Yes. Like,
these things that we're talking about, you know, we've learned and we're continuing to learn these things, which is why we're sharing this, because it's just like, wow, we've realized certain areas of our own marriages that we had areas of improvement on, to just be better. Because first of all, yes, marriage, it is work, but it is a beautiful thing. It is something that, you know, God created to show us truly his relationship with us.
Yes.
And we are not easy people.
No.
Okay, but
no,
he loves us. Even though we fall, we stumble, we mess up, he makes room for our flaws. He's forgiven us, and he is trying to have this relationship of reconciliation with us so we can have eternal life. And that is the same thing for our spouse. Like, love is supposed to cover all of that. There's not supposed to be any condition. There's not supposed, I love you
this,
with,
but not for that. Like, I got grace for this, but don't you dare do that.
Right.
And God doesn't do us like that.
No.
He does not treat us that way, that I only got this much grace for you, but don't you step over this way, my child. And if you carry the Spirit of God within you, that should come out in how you treat your spouse above everybody else.
Right.
If I'm going to practice being like God and having grace and love like God, let me first practice with this spouse, because like you said, we are one.
Right.
So I'm actually practicing with myself. I'm practicing grace with myself.
And don't you want a safe space? Don't you want a place where you can be vulnerable, where you can talk to somebody and say, look, I'm having some thoughts. I think I need you to pray for me.
Yes.
You yourself want that. So why not give it to your other half? Why not give it to the person that you are becoming one with? The person that you vowed and said that you were going to love through the good and the bad.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, nobody forced you to say that.
No.
You said that on your own. You said yes. You said that I will, and I'm going to be in this with you for life.
For life.
Not until you show me something that I don't like and then I'm out. That's not what you said. If you said that, okay, correct me. I said.
Well, they should have said that. We married until you do A, B, C, and D. Don't ever do these things, because when you do these things, we're done.
I'm out.
And there are people who get married with those thought processes that if they cross that line, I'm gonna be ready with my bags packed. And they brag about it and tell people, oh no, that would never happen, because if they do that, okay, so you didn't marry unconditionally. You didn't marry for better or worse, because
we
what
have
is worse?
Conditions. You have conditions.
That's a lot of conditions, because if you don't do this, and that, I'm out the door.
Oh, but you have conditions. Can the spouse have conditions and say that, oh, if you do X, Y, and Z, I'm out? Oh, now they wrong. Now
some people would agree with that, but that's a marriage in which there is no true grace, and there is no room for error. There is no room for fault. And so now we have a marriage based on rules. And if you live
like a contract.
That's a contract. And if we are in a contract still can be broken.
Yes.
And they are. And get ready for it. Because if you have a contract, somebody's going to break it. People just get tired. That's not even a beautiful marriage. That's not love.
No.
And so we cannot forget that the essence of marriage was just for God to get us where we're supposed to be. It is not to break you. It's not to tear you apart. It's not to rip up your spouse. It's that God said, I want to show you me.
Yes.
And I'll show you me through your spouse.
Yes.
Can your spouse get a piece of God through you? Can they get a taste of how God is?
Right.
By being in a relationship with you and say, wow, this person is the very essence of God for me, his love for me. Look how they have my back. Look how they support me. Look how they restore me when I'm down. Look how they tell me who I really am, and they speak life into me. Look at that. I have an actual human being representation of God for me. Can your spouse say that about you? Can they say that you are a representation of God's love for them in human form?
Right. And all of that we are going to continue to talk about in our next episode, when we talk about nurturing.
The nurturing
because
environment.
that is what God does for us. He nurtures us. He loves us. He cares for us. And that is exactly what we are supposed to be showing to our spouse, is that nurture and creating that environment for that nurturing essence to exist,
to take place.
and to take place. So,
because if you ain't nurturing me, I ain't sharing nothing with you.
Right.
So we're going to talk about that next week
Yes.
on
Love
Love
Essentials.
Essentials.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you got something out of the episode.
If you want to connect with us, you can email us at loveessentialsshow@gmail.com
Or check us out on Facebook at Love Essentials.
or Instagram at The Love Essentials.
You can also check me out on Hannah's World Podcast on Spotify or iTunes.
And check me out at towerbody.com, where you can pick up my latest book, Marriage is a Beautiful Thing, But I Wish I Would Have Known. We appreciate you watching our show today. Take care.
Bye.